Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm Katie, a member of the CK-12 team, and my colleague Felix and I will be running today's webinar on CK-12's newly updated Google Classroom integration. We're so glad you've joined us. Before we get into today's content, I'd like to go over a few logistics about the Zoom webinar platform to make sure everyone is comfortable using the different windows. You should see two different options on your Zoom screen, one for Q&A and one for chat. During today's presentation, whenever you have a question about CK-12, please post it in the Q&A window. We will pause for a Q&A session after our demo, and then again at the end for any final questions, so we can address those that have been submitted. The chat window is a place for community conversation. We'd love for you all to introduce yourselves. If you're an educator, feel free to share your state or country, district, or subject you teach. Just make sure in the chat window that you are sending any general posts to all panelists and attendees, and not just to CK-12 or the panelists. I know some people have started introducing themselves already, so just make sure you're selecting that if you want others to be able to see it as well. So while we don't anticipate any technical issues, if you are having trouble with your video or your sound, please let us know, and we'll see what we can do to help you. So with that, today's session is called Google Classroom Integration. And for those of you using CK-12 and Google Classroom, or using one and interested in incorporating the other, this is a great place to start. Specifically during this webinar, we'll be covering the following topics. CK-12 modalities, so our concept-based learning and CK-12 modalities. So this will be a quick review of the ones that can be assigned to CK-12 or from CK-12 to Google Classroom, as well as how each type is reported. And then Felix will show us the updated integration with Google Classroom, the new assign to class option versus sharing, seeing student progress, and then assigning the content and practice as we go through that. So before we get started with today's content, let's find out how much you already know about the CK-12 modalities that you can assign to a Google class. You'll see a poll here in a few seconds that will prompt you to respond to a short question. So let's see if we can get that up there. And there it is. So the question is, have you reviewed yourself or assigned any of the following to your students? Basically, this is just telling us how familiar you might be with these modality types already. So feel free to select more than one, any that apply as you work your way through. The first is adaptive practice and quizzes, then Flexbooks or sections of books, Plix interactives, simulations, videos, and real-world applications. So I'm going to pause for a few seconds to let you finish answering this poll. And as I said, you're welcome to answer with more than one selection as you go. Okay, it looks like we have maybe 3/4 of you that have answered. We'll give you a few more seconds as we go through this. And maybe we'll, last second, then we'll wrap that up. Okay, and let's see those results. So it looks like the majority of you have used our Flexbooks as well as our videos and practice. Some of you guys are kind of newer to our interactives and our simulations as well as our real world applications. So that makes sense kind of based on how we started and what was happening kind of in the history of CK-12 and what you might be using. But since not all of you have used our content, we're definitely going to take just a few minutes to explain the different types of modalities you can assign within Google Classroom. So with that, I'm going to continue from there. So the first thing that you should know is that CK-12 is really based on what we call concept-based learning. So these are where we kind of split the skills that you would need to learn, particularly in math and science, which is what we're focused on. And we split them into what we call concepts, and then supported these concepts with distinct options for a variety of modalities. So you'll see text-based lessons, which is what we call reads. Those are part of your Flexbooks if you build a Flexbook out of them. You'll see videos, our adaptive practice, interactives and simulations, real-world applications, and you can assign a number of these different modalities to your students. You might occasionally see something else like the study aid that you see there that's just kind of an extra resource for learning that particular concept or reviewing it as you go. Now, if you're assigning practice to students, this is kind of the big thing that you would be expecting to see a report from and you might want within Google Classroom or CK-12. So you should know that we have over 150,000 questions that cover math, science, and some spelling review as well. Those questions come at 3 different levels. So you'll see easy, medium, and hard questions. And as students are doing better and better, it will continue to bump them up to harder questions, really trying to challenge them at the level that they're at. Students who are struggling are going to see easier questions, and then they might even see a pop-up option where they get a video or a read or an interactive that encourages them to explore the concept a bit more before they then go back into practice. So that's what we're saying in terms of that adapting component to how the student is performing. Just like our Flexbooks, you can customize these into what we call quizzes, and you can actually pick and choose the questions, whether or not they have hints. All of those are options. And adaptive practice and quizzes we'll talk about as we talk about kind of how you assign within Google Classroom or CK-12. And just a note, you can access those on kind of a computer or download an app on the App Store or Google Play. So students could do practice on their phone or a tablet if they wanted to do that as well. Now our Flexbooks, these cover a variety of topics. Our core content is primarily middle school, high school math, and K-12 science at this point in time, but you'll see a variety of other resources. And those are ready to use. You can use them completely as is as your reference, or you can customize them into something else and mix and match chapters and sections, and even go in and edit the content itself under our license. And that's kind of where, with those customization pieces that you or others can do, we also have what we call community contributed books. And those, you'll see a variety of topics, social studies, some English content, and then we even have some donated content that you might see on our homepage in engineering and a couple other subject areas. So those books are available both on our site as well as offline in our Chrome reader or in the apps. So same deal there, you can download it either on the App Store or the Google Play Store to access our Flexbooks. The next thing is that one of our newest modality types are our simulations. We have over 120 physics and chemistry simulations. Our physics ones were done first, so those are complete. Our chem ones, we have a few that we're working on, and those are in beta, so they'll continually expand as we work through. They cover a variety of topics from motion and mechanics to sound and light, and then, as I said, we're moving into chemistry too. These include real-world situations, and they have sliders so students can control the situation and control their learning. And then even questions that let the students go back in and kind of show what they're learning and understand and submit those as they work. Those are available on the web, and you can also download them on a tablet. So if you're working in a classroom with a number of students and they all want to access it at the same time, you could download those and access those offline within the tablet option. Our other type of interactives are our PLIX interactives. It stands for Play, Learn, Interact, and Explore. We have over 1,100 PLIX across all branches of math and science. And these include a description, link to text, lessons if students are struggling, and then questions for comprehension, as well as the interactive environment itself. And there's a variety of different types that include real-world application and exploration of topics. So these are kind of smaller interactions, but definitely a broader coverage. So you'll see those as an option as well to assign. The last two types of modalities that you can assign are videos and real-world applications. So video, pretty standard. You might see a variety of those across the web. And then our real-world applications really try to take that concept and apply it to a situation in the real world for a student to learn more about that. So the question we always get is, well, how does this show up? What does it mean when I assign a particular modality type? So starting with kind of what we were talking about, that adaptive practice, the goal for a student is to get 10 correct. And they can turn that in at any point in time that they're working on it. And the percentage would be out of 100 within CK-12. Or if you pick a score in Google Classroom, it would be a % out of 10 correct that they're working towards. If you customize that into a quiz, the goal would be to get 100 on that quiz. And the percent would be based on however many questions you had. So if you had 20 questions and they got 10 right, they would get a 50% on that piece, or whatever percentage of the score you choose within Google Classroom. And the same deal with that. They can submit that kind of at any attempt that they take on the quiz. The next types were those text and video-based modalities. So when they open it, they can turn it in after opening. It should read it as something that they've actually accessed. And then Plix Interactives, they should start exploring and actually trying questions. So we really want to encourage that exploration. So it's kind of after they start answering questions that they would be able to get that. And then simulations once they get to the exploratory component in that sandbox as well. So all of those other types are full credit or no credit. So within CK-12, you would get a check mark or no credit yet. And then within Google Classroom, you get 0 or a full score based on how you're working on there. So now that you have a basic idea of the different types of modalities and how students would see them or their reports within Google Classroom, I'm going to turn this over to Felix, who's going to actually demo a couple of pieces of Google Classroom and then demo live for us so we can see what that looks like.
Great, thanks, Katie. Hello, everyone. My name is Felix, and I also work for CK-12, and I'm going to go through our integration with Google Classroom. So just to point out, before we had, I guess, a deeper integration with Google Classroom, we had the share button that we exposed, which we still do have. But now with the assign feature, you can actually create an assignment through CK-12, which will then give you like a reported score, kind of referring back to the chart that you just saw for these different types of modalities. And I'll show you guys that in a second. So when you're creating your assignments, you'll see this dialog, and there's going to be a connect to Google link. And when you click on that, it's going to ask you to select an account. So if you have multiple accounts that you're using, or maybe you've signed in with a bunch of different emails, you'll be able to choose the one that you want to use for your Google Classroom, and then you'll be able to see a list of those classes show up. All right, and now I will go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so hopefully you guys can see this. So I'm logged in as a teacher. And after you sign in to our site, you're taken to a dashboard. And so this dashboard is kind of populated based on what you've recently viewed. So if you've been browsing and checking out different resources, you'll see these kind of show up just in case you wanted to refer back to them quickly. And also some trending things based on other users in your area, what they're looking at, and things like that. And also based on, up here, there's a little subjects category where you can actually choose which subjects you're interested in, and then we'll try to highlight those subjects and resources within those subjects for you. So since we're on the dashboard, I guess I can start here. So this is actually a good place where you can start just sort of assigning items. So if you were to click on any of these, you'll have a few options, but the one we're interested in right here is the assign to class. So if I click on that, this is going to bring up this dialog. Since we're doing Google Classroom as our sort of classroom management, we'll go ahead and choose that. And I had previously did the connect to Google, so that's why I'm seeing these classes show up right away. But if for some reason you're not seeing the classes that you are expecting to see, or you don't see any, there's this option here to try another account. So say you're signed in and you have maybe a couple different Google Classrooms that you sort of manage between different accounts. You can click on this, select a new account, and then that will bring that up for you. So even if you selected something by accident, you can get yourself out just by clicking on this and then selecting another course or account, sorry. So from here, you have the option of selecting like all these different courses you want. or not. And then you can select a due date. So with this, you'll have to select a due date in at least a day ahead. Google Classroom doesn't allow us to assign something that's like for the current date. So you'll have to pick something at least a day ahead. And then also you can add instructions. So like something you might want your students to see. So that can be like little notes for them, any additional things that you kind of want them to take into consideration while doing the assignment. If you wanted, you can also change the title. Then you can change that to whatever you want. And then when you're ready to assign it, you click on Assign to Classroom. And so this has been created, and it provides like a link to go to the classroom. Oops. Okay, so because I'm also signed in as a couple different accounts, Google sort of picks the one that I guess frequently use. So if you see that happen, you might need to just click on this guy and select the course that you want, or the account that you would like. So here's the one that we just created. As you can see, the instructions show up here. This link is where the students will click on and be taken to that assignment. Before I jump into that, I'm going to kind of show you a couple things. So one of the nice things about leveraging Google Classroom as your classroom management system and kind of assigning things from us and using our content is that Google Classroom allows you to select which students you would like to assign to. So if say you didn't want to assign this to everyone, you just wanted maybe to choose which student you wanted, then you have the option of doing that. So that's a nice feature that you kind of get out of the box. And also, if you wanted to change the due date, you can come in here and modify that as well. And then you save it, and that's that. So I'll kind of jump back onto our site just to show you some other places where you can find content. So of course, there's the search bar at the top here. So if you wanted to search for something, you can do that as well. And so this is going to bring up all the relevant resources. So by default, we show you our CK-12 tab of all the resources that we've sort of created, curated, and published ourselves, and as well as community contributed. So these are customized resources that other users on our site have modified, published, and is now accessible for anyone who's searching for content. And then if you've been customizing things yourself, we'll also show you any relevant searches up here in the My Library section. So we can go ahead and click on water cycle. And this view that's loading is also what you'll see kind of when browsing around after you kind of dial into a topic that you like. So we provide all these different resources. So right off the back, there's the read, the clicks, and the videos that Katie talked about earlier. There's also activities and study aids and lesson plans. So these guys aren't actually assignable through Google Classroom through our assign feature, but you can always share it, which was the other distinction we wanted to point out. And I can show you things that are assignable, what that would look like. So I'm going to go ahead and also click on this. Actually, let me click on the practice. So on our pages that we have the assign to class feature, these are the pages where you'll actually be able to use that assign feature like we saw earlier, and create an assignment that gives you that grade passed back so that you'll get a score reported once the student has either interacted or, in the case of practice, actually attempted some of those practice questions. So anywhere where you're seeing this assign to class, that's where you can take advantage of that feature. For the other resources that that do not support like assigning, like such as an activity and some of the lesson plans, like if this was something you wanted to add or sort of share to Google Classroom, down here we have this Share Me airplane. You can click on that, and that's going to bring up a few different options, but right at the top here, we have Share on Google Classroom. So what this does, and I guess the big distinction between doing this versus using our Assign to Class feature, sharing it on Google Classroom through this button that they provide, you can still select your account, and you can still assign it to, oops, want that. Okay, it's opening in a new window. So you can still select, your classes, and you have the option of creating assignment, but going this route doesn't give you the grading aspect of it. So we won't be able to say like this student has at least accessed this resource or interacted with it, and show you a grade for that. So this kind of came before we were able to deeply integrate with Google Classroom, but this is still a good option if you just want to include things that you can't particularly assign. Maybe like you want to add your entire Flexbook to Google Classroom. Using the share option is a good way. It's, I guess, a little easier than just copying and pasting a link. This is a feature that Google Classroom themselves offer, so it's still pretty useful in those situations. So I'll also kind of go into the browse in case you guys haven't seen it. So once you're signed in and you've kind of been browsing, if you've selected any of the kind of where we are on that dashboard in your profile, we'll ask you what subjects you're interested in. And then we can only show you the ones that you're interested in. Otherwise, we can show you like everything that we have to offer, which is a pretty healthy amount. But diving into any of these, you'll be able to see kind of our topics here. And if you want to kind of quickly expand everything and see what's nested under each of these, you can, and just sort of scroll and see which titles capture your interest. Click on that, and then we'll be back to kind of that page that we saw with all the cards and the tiles. And then one thing to note here, you may only see these few tiles, but kind of down here, there's a little icon that says one more read. So if you were to click on that, it would show you more. And even down here, there's 3 more. So in case you think there's not enough content, if you happen to kind of notice this, or maybe just kind of look out for it, that way you can actually not miss the remaining resources that we have. And then again, we have our community content tab. And so I'm going to also quickly jump into the library. So here's places where you can also create assignments. So like Katie was saying, you can customize a quiz. So if I click on this quiz, it's going to open up. And this is something that you can also create an assignment for. And we notice we have our assign to class action. So we can go in here and assign it to our demo class. Let's see. And so that will also show up in our classroom. And then I did also want to cover our interactives, which Katie mentioned. So those are our sims and our plixes. So I can kind of open up some of our physics simulations. I'll do the first guy. So these can also be assigned to your Google classes. So here you can kind of go through and see, we have sort of like an intro video to kind of give you a little context and show you what's going on. And then here are the different manipulatives that you can kind of go around and play with and toggle, so students can kind of explore these concepts and see how they're actually affecting this concept. And then once you kind of reviewed it and you're ready to assign it, again, we have that assign a class up here. And then you would click on the same Google Classroom, and you can assign that to your classroom as well. So now I'll go in back into this classroom that we have. To bring up some of the assignments that we've kind of already attended. So here's one example. So this guy is just a read assignment. So there's no interaction or there's no practice that's done for this. And I can show you what that looks like for the student opening it up. So students will see kind of this view for like their reads. And the way this works for like read in the real world example, pretty much anything that's not a practice or like an interactive, which is our sims and our plixes. Once they access this, then they'll get an automatic grade of full credit. So whatever you assign that grade to be, that's what they'll get max value for. So in the case of these two students here, they've gotten the 10 points that we've assigned. And by default, I think we always do 100%. So again, going into that edit, if you wanted to assign this, say you've created this assignment and you wanted to modify it, clicking here and going to edit, you can bring that up. Oops. Clicking in here, you can change the point value. So if you want it to be like maybe 50 points, you can do that. It's going to tell you, it's giving you a little warning here saying, are you sure you want to update the value? Students who've already received grades will be notified. We're going to go ahead and say yes. So now they're getting the 10 out of 50. So if they were to go back in and kind of, I guess if you did this before they actually saw the assignment, it would be better. But in this case, you can either change it directly here, which is something Google allows you to do, or if it was in case of like a practice or something, they could actually open that practice back up and then just turn it in again. But if you needed to edit the point value, let's actually take one that we haven't, none of the kids have done. So here, if you wanted to kind of change the point value, you can do that as well. And then, so this is kind of before they've even attempted it, we've modified it there. So you do have that option. The default value that we sort of give is the 100 points, but if you wanted to go in and modify that point, you can. And to give you an idea of what a practice report can look like, so down here, there are a couple of attachments for these students. So if you were to click on this, let's say for Jumpstart student, let's check out how they did. So you're gonna see the percentage they got, how many they got correct, the time that was spent, their skill level. But if you scroll down, you'll actually get to see what questions and what their answers were. So like this one they got correct, okay, this one they missed, and this is what they chose. So you can kind of review that and see how they did. And we can do the same thing for the student here. So okay, they got a 70%. We got a best streak was they got 2. Spent a little bit more time, 13 minutes. But then again, and it's also, so it gives you like the breakdown here as well. So 7 out of 12, but we also have a breakdown of easy, medium, and hard. And so you can see how many of the medium they got right are versus, how many of the hard. And again, you can see the questions themselves and how in their answers. And then I also will point out, since a good portion of you said you were interested in the Flexbook sections, so if you guys were using things, if you've already been customizing Say you're customizing a Flexbook for your students and you wanted to assign that just to see that they're actually at least accessing some of these sections, you can. So we don't allow you to assign the entire Flexbook, but we do let you get down to, I guess, sort of the meat of the content, if you will. So diving down into like a section for a particular section in your Flexbook, you do have the option to assign the class here. So if you wanted to pick out a few sections that you kind of wanted them to read and, and actually to be able to get some credit for, you can do that as well. And this is kind of the same dialogue we've been seeing. So that is also an option. All right. And so I think with that, I will pause and
I will jump in for a second.
Sure.
Thanks. So what we're going to do, because we're at about that 30-minute mark, and we know some of you wanted to probably head out from here, it looks like we're getting a couple of questions in the chat window, and I'm going to give you guys, I'm going to do some general wrap-up stuff right now and give you a chance to kind of ask some of those questions in the Q&A window as well. So once I get through that, then we'll go back to answering questions. So if you have any, feel free to stay on after that as well. But let me go ahead and share my screen for a minute. So just a few things to note. You can find more information on kind of the apps that I mentioned and other learning management systems on our tools and apps page, which you can find in the footer of our website. So go ahead and check that out if you're trying to find links to our apps directly. Or as we said, Google Classroom is integrated, Edmodo, Schoology, Canvas, and some other ones are also integrated. So you can check out more information on that same tools and apps page. And then a super useful resource for you is an overview. So we've been talking a lot about different types of resources on CK-12. So if you go to ck12.org/overview, the assignable modalities, as well as some other tools like our general information on concept pages and other things like that are on that particular page. And as I said, ck12.org/overview, or it's under the footer in CK-12 resources. Another great resource for you is our cafe. So feel free to check that out and answer and ask questions on there. We'll have more information about our upcoming programs on there shortly as well. But feel free to use our support features or this to get your questions answered. We have another couple upcoming webinars. Flexbooks 101 is coming up next. That is in mid-February. So come and join us for that one if you want to learn more about those Flexbooks. And we are releasing some Common Core math books this spring. So we'll be doing a webinar specifically on those in mid-March. So you can register for either of those and see archived webinars at our webinars page. So if you want to check this particular webinar out again, go ahead and check out ck12.org/webinars. We do run a certified educator program every summer, and those signups will be coming out shortly. So you can see that. If you have any questions, you can also email jumpstart@ck12.org. And then for each one of these webinars, we just try to get feedback and figure out what's helpful, what's not helpful. So Star will message this URL in the chat window for us in a second, but it'll also be up in your follow-up email. We're also trying to get testimonials specifically for using Google Classroom integration. So if you have any great stories about using it, when I send out our follow-up email tomorrow, please, please, please consider replying to that and letting us know how things are going. And then finally, thank you. You can always email us at support if you have questions. You can share on the socials at CK12 Foundation or hashtag CK12. So I think with that, we have some questions in the chat window and in Q&A. So we'll have Felix take over from here and start answering any more. If you are all set, you are welcome to head out. If you want to stay on for any questions, feel free to continue to ask them. Thanks so much.
Okay, so jumping into Q&A. Okay, so it looks like there's a question on, okay, so Janine has, okay, Janine, So I think if I'm following you correctly, the part where you posted the assignment itself and you weren't seeing any grades, I'm not sure if you did the share. Let me jump into, okay. If you, when you created that assignment, if you went through this sort of share on Google Classroom and then create an assignment from there, from this flow, it will not give you any grades. But if you went through sort of the assigned to class workflow that
Felix, I'm just going to have you share your screen so they can see that
oh,
part.
sorry. I thought I was, okay. Oops. There you go. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, let me go back. So if you were doing the sort of the share on to Google Classroom, I'm not sure if this is the case for you, but if you went through this way, sort of selected and created an assignment this way we won't be able to do any sort of grading. So if you wanted to create an assignment and get the grading, you would have to use this assign to classroom and sort of connect this way. And then this way you should be getting, your students should be getting graded. If there's still some issue happening, please, I guess we can stay on after this and sort of discuss that. But just to clarify, yeah, going through the share and doing it this way will not give you any grading. But going through the assigned to class should give you sort of the reporting that we saw over here for some of the samples that we had. And then let me see what else questions. I think there were some questions in the chat window.
Yeah, Felix, we have a question about explorations. So maybe you could just reiterate what I said before about kind of the conditions for turning those in versus other people just being able to click complete at different times.
Okay, explorations. Oh, I think you're referring, okay, so like for our sims, let me see if I can pull this up. I'm gonna try sharing this with you guys. Okay, so hopefully you guys can see this. This screen here should be signed in as a student. Okay, so now I'm signed in as a student. I think for the explorations, you're probably referring to either like our Sims or our Plixes. So this is the student account. So this is separate from my teacher account. So when students are coming in and clicking on, they'll have to sort of agree to this permissions here that we need to see their classes and be able to give them a grade for their work. So that dialog will come up, and then they'll be kind of taken to their assignment. So this was that elevator simulation. I think this is what you're referring to. So for the Sims and the Plixes, they have to interact with them. So they'll have to kind of go through this. You can skip that. And then once they're sort of here, there's an option to turn in. So they can click on that, and then we kind of mark that as an assignment being turned in. For the read assignments, like, let's see if I can show. I think this one was probably a read. So for these types of assignments, there isn't any explicit turn-in. As soon as this page loads, we're firing off 100% for this assignment. And then for the practice, like we saw, I can show you guys that as well. So since the students already attempted it, we'll see that turn-in button. So yeah, so for the practice, there's an explicit turn-in here. So for our practice, our sim, and then also for the Plix, there's an actual turn-in button that they click on to sort of submit the assignment. But for that read, the one that looks closed. Well, the read that I show you that just sort of had the article showing, that one, as soon as they open it, it's going to send the score. But for these guys, there's actually like a button they'll have to do. And same for the quiz. The quiz will have a similar sort of interface or look and feel. And once they kind of go through an attempt, they'll be able to click on this button and turn it in.
So Felix, we have a question about customizing practice.
Okay.
And it says, A, will it be scored and show up like the regular practice? And is there a way to link it to a Flexbook reading? So my suggestion for the Flexbook reading link is in those instructions that Felix was showing you. When you share and assign that you kind of put the link to the Flexbook reading. It's not going to show up like the automated kind of the adaptive practice. But maybe you could talk a little bit about the difference in scores between a customized and a regular practice.
So so I guess for our adaptive practice, once you get, I think, sort of 10 questions correct, you'll get that'll get you up to 100%. But for quizzes, basically it's based on what you set up as the criteria. So you're actually getting the chance to select which questions you actually want to see on the quiz. So you'll get to choose which, like for example, these guys here, you'll get to choose which of those questions appear, and then students will go in and say you've only put maybe like 5, let's say you put in 10 questions. So they'll go through all of the 10 questions, and then once they complete that, whatever, however many they got right out of, the total number there, that's what gets reported. And they can keep, for the practice, they can keep attempting this as long as it's not like past due. They can keep attempting this to get like a better score, and then once they get 100, they can do that. But for quizzes, you can actually sort of lock down the number of attempts. So if you just want to have them only have, maybe they have one shot, to do their best and submit that, you have that option of doing that with the quiz. But for the practice, it's sort of open to, they can sort of try as many times, almost as many times as they want. But for the quiz, you have a little bit more restriction where you can sort of say, I want a certain amount of questions, and also the number of attempts that that are available, and as well as the time. You can have it be a timed quiz as well. So if you want to kind of narrow it down and get a little more control, I think doing a customized quiz and assigning that might be what you would want to do.
Felix, we had another question about assigning content from the Flexbook app. And so I just want to answer that for our users, that the Flexbook app is just Flexbook. So you can't, it is simply there so that you can access a Flexbook offline. So it's not something that you would necessarily use for an assignment, and it's definitely wouldn't have the ability to assign any of the other modality types in there. So you'd want to be doing that assignment from a computer or a Chromebook or something where you're accessing it on the web. And then I guess we have a question here that says, do you know why students will sometimes see over 100% on their assignments? So maybe you could talk about that practice in those pieces.
Yeah, so the practice, once they kind of move this window. So for this practice here, our adaptive practices, they can keep practicing. And our adaptive practice allows you you can go beyond the 100%. So if they get all these questions correct and they want to continue going, they can get over that 100 mark. So that's why in some cases you'll probably see maybe, more than 100%, which just means they've kept going and they've been attempting, and, they've gone above and beyond, the requirement that we've set for our adaptive practice. But again, and if that's something you kind of wanted to lock down, I would suggest doing a quiz, and you can sort of customize based off of maybe one of the existing practices, and maybe pick out a few very questions from there, and then limiting it to, either the number of attempts, or you'll have at least you'll have that, you'll have a little bit finer control. But for our adaptive practice, we don't stop at 100%, so they can continue going through as long as there's still questions that they haven't sort of seen. You may have students who are going over 100 eventually run into, like, you've kind of went through all the questions in this particular practice or concept, so you can start over. But for the quiz, you can definitely set like how many questions you want. And I see a question from Janine. Okay. So Janine was saying she went back and she was able to find the grades. So she was looking for the grades to show up on CK-12 and also in Google Classroom. Okay, so hey Janine. So for our integration with the assignments from Google Classroom are just talking directly to Google Classroom. We don't have I guess we haven't really built it out to show up in both. So I guess if you're creating groups in both places, you'd have to sort of manage them separately. But we are sort of working on improvements to this, to Google Classroom. And I know that was like another option that we were kind of considering. But for now, it would just show up for Google Classroom in your case. But I'm glad you found your grades. And then so Heidi was asking if there's a way to highlight or take notes on the readings that are assigned. So that option is currently not available through any of our LMS integrations like Canvas, Edmodo, Schoology, but we are working on sort of building that out so that you will be able to see, they will be able to highlight and take notes. So that's something that we're working on and hope to have that roll out for you guys in the not so distant future. But that is something we are working on, Heidi. So thanks for asking.
Felix, we have a couple of other questions in the chat window that are coming in. So just if you answer them in Q&A, we'll make sure we're not to miss them. But let me see if I can get those asked and answered. So we have someone that says they've assigned a couple of readings and practices in a single assignment. With this integration, do they need to separate them for auto-grading purposes?
Can you repeat that one more time?
Yeah, so I think they're asking, in the past, they've been able to kind of put multiple links and assign them all in one single assignment. If they want separate grading in order for it to auto-grade, do they have to do it individually?
Okay, yes, they would have to do that. You would have to assign them individually if you want separate grading. That's correct. I'm not sure if you were using our groups in assignments, we have a way where you can kind of bundle up like a few different things. But with this integration, you'd have to assign them individually to get a grade for each one.
The other option I could think about is if you're only really looking for a grade for the practice, you could always put the link to the read within that assignment. It just wouldn't show complete or incomplete separately for that. And then we have a question about assigning an item from CK-12 to Google Classroom. Is there an option to schedule a time when it is assigned there?
That is a good question. I can share my screen. Is there an option to set a scheduled time? I'm not sure if you can do this in Google Classroom directly, but let me see. I thought I did see something. Due date and time. So, okay, so there is a way for you to, when it is assigned. So I don't think you can do that, but okay, thanks for clarifying, Christopher. So yeah, you would have to do it directly on Google Classroom. So not from CK-12, but kind of after you assigned it, then you can go in and take advantage of those features that Google provides. And like I said, we are sort of still kind of working on improving this. So this is good feedback. So if that's something that you guys would like to see, we can definitely consider in sort of adding more of those options that you have directly on Classroom. Okay, I see Adam is also saying, yeah, okay. So Adam is kind of agreeing. Okay, so I guess to answer your question, Christopher, right, currently there isn't a way to do it through CK-12. You sort of have to come in kind of like I did and then modify it. But that's good feedback, and that's definitely something we can look into getting added. So thank you.
We had one other question there that asked about students where they've done work in previous years and then it's showing up, but it's not giving them new credit. Usually they still need to open a read or access a video, or if it's practice, just open it up and turn it in again so that it passes that grade there. Because if they did it for a different teacher, that report would be going to that different teacher. So they would just need to kind of open it and kick that over to the system for you if you've assigned it after that point in time. So that's currently it for our open questions. If we missed anything, we'll give you a minute to kind of add something else into open questions. And then you can always email support. I'm sure that the more people get a chance to use this new integration, which is really that ability to see reports within Google Classroom by assigning it instead of just sharing it, that we can continue to answer those. And then we have questions about blocking YouTube videos. Right now, I would say you could see if you could access them, some of them on kind of the educator version of YouTube. Otherwise, you would need to, because they're streaming from YouTube. We're using a variety of different resources for videos. And so I would definitely say look at your defaults and blocks and see if you can expand that. But that's kind of case by case for different districts.
Yeah, and then I guess just to add to that, I'm not sure if you guys wanted to have those removed, you can always customize, that particular resource. If it's a read and remove the videos, if that was the concern. So you have the option to do that as well, if you need to.
And the last question that just came in asked about highlighting and note-taking. Currently, that's available within CK-12 and not the integration option. But we'll look into options for that. I think Felix was talking about it earlier.
Right, yeah. Hi, Amanda. Yeah, so I was saying we were just kind of going over this. And so it is something that we are actually looking into extending. So that way, within these different LMS integrations, especially Google Classroom being a very popular one, your students will have the option of highlighting and taking notes. So we are sort of working on getting that feature added. I don't have any sort of ETA for you, but it is something that we're working on. So please stay tuned.
Well, I think that's it. So we're going to say thank you to those of you guys who stayed on and continue to ask questions. As I said, feel free to email support@ck12.org or ask your questions in the Jumpstart forum if you have questions about this integration or just using CK-12 in general. Thank you so much.